In an unprecedented sight, a female elephant, one of the most powerful animals in Africa, was being suffocated by something not even native to her world. A massive python coiled around her with deadly strength. Rangers rushed to help, but what left everyone speechless wasn't just the scene they found. It was what the male elephant did next. Because in that moment, in the middle of a hot road far from any safe den, instinct turned into something else. Something we don't often talk about in the wild. Loyalty, courage, and a kind of love that doesn't need words. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and turn on notifications because the story you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about wild animals and the bonds they carry in silence. The road that ran through the western edge of the savannah was quiet that morning. Spring was giving way to summer, and the woods had just begun to hum again. Antelope in the valleys, eagles overhead, rivers rising with melted snow. Ranger Tyler Nash, on patrol since dawn, had expected a normal day. He was sipping lukewarm coffee from a tin cup when the radio crackled. "Strange movement near Flat Ridge Pass," said a voice. "Possible injured animal. Could be a rhino or something bigger." 10 minutes later, Tyler's truck rolled to a stop on a narrow two-lane road, and what he saw made his chest tighten. There, sprawled across the pavement, was a young female elephant. She wasn't just lying down, she was trapped, her limbs twitching helplessly beneath the crushing coils of a snake that didn't belong in Africa at all. A python. It was massive, nearly 20 feet thick as a fence post. Its body coiled again and again around the elephant's midsection, squeezing, suffocating. Its dull eyes flicked toward Tyler as he stepped out of the truck, frozen for just a second in disbelief. The elephant let out a choking gasp. Tyler dropped the coffee, grabbed a staff from the bed of his truck, and radioed for backup. His voice was urgent. "Female elephant in distress, not alone. It's a python, repeat. Large python attacking native wildlife." He approached slowly, heart hammering. The python's head shifted. It hissed. The elephant's eyes met his, and then the forest cracked open behind him. A roar exploded from the trees. Tyler spun just in time to see a full-grown male elephant tear through the underbrush. Massive, powerful, charging straight for the snake. Instinct told Tyler to run, but the elephant didn't come for him. He came for her. The male slammed into the snake, snarling, biting, swiping with tusks like hammers. The python reared back, instinctively tightening around its prey, but the male was relentless. He ripped into it, ignoring the blood that now streaked across both his tusks. Within seconds, more rangers arrived. Tyler shouted, "Help him! Don't hit the elephants! Distract the snake!" They fanned out, circling. One fired a warning shot into the air. Another jabbed at the python's tail. The snake thrashed, loosened. The female elephant collapsed with a grunt, finally free. But the male didn't stop. He stood over her, breathing hard, eyes locked on the wounded python. It slithered off into the grass, defeated. He didn't run. He didn't leave. He stood like a sentinel, protecting her. When it was over, no one moved. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Tyler whispered, "That elephant just saved her life." And the way he stayed beside her, even as humans closed in, said more than any sound ever could. This wasn't just survival, this was devotion. And the story had only just begun. The wounded female elephant lay motionless on the asphalt, her chest rising in shallow breaths. Her skin was matted with sweat, dust, and blood where the snake had coiled. The marks across her ribs were deep, purplish blue beneath the skin. Brutal proof of how close death had come. Ranger Tyler Nash crouched low, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. Around him, 3 other rangers fanned out, speaking in hushed tones, eyes flicking nervously between the elephants in the forest. But it was the male that held their full attention. He towered over the female, his massive body heaving with each breath. There was blood on his tusks, not his, but the python's. His dark eyes watched every move the rangers made, not with aggression, but something sharper, protective, daring them to get too close. "We've got to help her," one of the rangers, Marissa, whispered. Tyler nodded. "We just don't want to get trampled trying." He glanced again at the male. The elephant hadn't left her side since the attack ended. He hovered, pacing a tight circle, nudging her snout with his own. emitting low rumbles. Sounds so guttural and ancient, they stirred something deep in every human watching. Then something surprising happened. The female let out a soft whimper, and the male stepped back just 2 paces, nothing more. But it was enough to let the Rangers know, I'll let you try, but I'm still watching. Tyler's heart skipped. He lifted one hand slow and open. All right, girl, he whispered as if to a wounded animal. We're going to help. They moved as a team, slowly with towels, gloves, a field stretcher. Marissa injected a mild sedative into the elephant's hindquarters, just enough to ease the pain and keep her still. The male rumbled low but didn't charge. Tyler could feel his gaze like heat on his back as they worked. As they wrapped her midsection, they saw the damage. Ribs bruised, likely cracked. Puncture wounds from the snake's teeth. Deep abrasions from the asphalt. But she was breathing. She's going to make it, Marissa said under her breath, tightening the final strap on the stretcher. The team hoisted her carefully into the open Ranger vehicle. The male let out a loud exhale. A sound like frustration and grief rolled into one. Then he did something no one expected. He followed them. Step by heavy step, he trailed the gurney to the truck, then sat beside it. When they tried to close the tailgate, he stood up, placing his trunk on the back like a passenger boarding. Is he trying to come with her? One ranger asked. Tyler swallowed. I think he is. There was silence. A decision had to be made fast. If they drove off, would he follow the truck? Would he turn aggressive? Or worse, would he disappear, confused, thinking they had taken her forever? Tyler made the call. Let's give them the flatbed. It's open. He can stay with her. With shaking hands, they shifted the female onto the flatbed of the larger supply truck. The male climbed up behind her. As they laid her down and arranged padding, he curled his body around her gently like a wall of muscle and hide. No one said a word. They drove in silence, every bump on the forest road rattling nerves and hearts alike. And all the way to the rescue center, the male never looked away. He didn't growl, he didn't pace, he didn't panic. He just watched her chest rise and fall and stayed. It was in every sense an act of impossible trust. By the time they reached the gates of the wildlife clinic, the bond between the 2 elephants had already told its own story. But what came next would change even more. The Wildlife Rescue Center on the edge of the park wasn't built for this. It had treated eagles with broken wings, moose calves struck by cars, even the occasional mountain lion hit by poachers' traps. But this, 2 full-grown elephants, one injured, the other refusing to leave her side, was beyond protocol. Dr. Evelyn Hart, the lead wildlife vet, met the incoming truck with a clipboard in hand. Her eyes widened as the male elephant leapt down from the flatbed and then stood guard as they lowered the female. He followed her here, she asked Tyler. Did more than that, he replied. He saved her life. Evelyn scanned the female's body quickly. She's critical. We need to get her inside. Can you keep him back? Tyler shook his head. We tried. He won't go far. The medical team worked fast, wheeling the stretcher into a large treatment room just beyond the main barn. The male elephant padded behind them, muscles tense, breath heavy, but never threatening. He kept his distance, but never let her leave his sight. Inside, the lights buzzed and machines beeped as her heart moved swiftly. The elephant was sedated and stabilized, hooked up to fluids and a heart monitor. Bruised ribs, torn muscle, internal bleeding, but no punctured lung. A chance. In the adjacent room, the team prepared a holding area, but the male wasn't having it. As soon as they tried to close the door between them, he bellowed, not in rage, but in something else. A wild grief, a sound that made even the youngest ranger flinch. So they opened the door, and he walked in. He didn't touch her, didn't interfere, just lay down near her gurney, his massive head resting on his legs, eyes trained on her face. Evelyn stood at the threshold, stunned. I've never seen this, she whispered. It's like he knows she's not out of danger and he's waiting. The rangers left the room quietly. That night, the male didn't sleep. Every time the machines beeped louder or her breath hitched, he stood and watched. Evelyn returned at 2:00 a.m. to check vitals. She expected to see a distressed elephant lashing out. Instead, she found him watching her, eyes deep and still. He didn't move as she replaced fluids or adjusted the blanket. Only when she touched the female's trunk did he lower his head again, as if understanding. "You're helping. That's enough." By dawn, the team was calling the elephants by names unofficially. The female Ember, the male Ash. Names that felt right, as if their bond had burned through something primal. Ember stirred around 6:15 a.m. She groaned softly, moved her trunk, blinked. Ash sat up immediately, alert, and when she lifted her head and met his eyes, something passed between them that not even the humans in the room could explain. Ash chuffed gently. Amber blinked slowly in response, and then she rested her head back down. "She knows he's here," Evelyn said quietly. "That's all she needs right now." They kept the room warm, quiet. No restraints, no isolation. Because what they were witnessing wasn't just rare, it was sacred. Over the next 2 days, Ember grew stronger. Her breathing steadied. Her wounds began to close. Ash remained beside her, sometimes curling at her feet, sometimes pressed close to the wall. He never touched the equipment, never growled at the staff. Only once, when Ember whimpered in her sleep, did he rise and gently press his head to hers. Dr. Hart had seen decades of wilderness, but nothing like this. "It's more than instinct," she told Tyler one afternoon. "It's devotion." Tyler nodded. "It's loyalty. It's love." And though no one said it out loud, they all knew. Ash was willing to wait as long as it took. By the 4th day, the story of the 2 elephants had started to spread beyond the confines of the Wildlife Center. A local journalist heard about it through a park volunteer, and within hours, photos of Ash curled beside Ember's recovery bed had gone viral. "Devoted elephant refuses to leave injured mate's side," one headline read. "Elephant love story touches thousands," another claimed. But while the world looked in with awe and admiration, inside the center, the situation was becoming more complicated. Ember was healing slowly but steadily. The bruises around her ribs had faded from black to deep purple. She could now shift her weight, lift her head longer, and drink water without assistance. Ash, ever vigilant, would sit beside her with a kind of gentleness that never ceased to amaze the staff. But he was beginning to change. He barely ate. He wouldn't leave the room, not even for a walk in the small outdoor enclosure the team had prepared. When they tried to coax him out, he trumpeted, not out of rage, but fear. Fear that if he turned his back even for a moment, she might not be there when he returned. "We're reaching a limit," Dr. Evelyn Hart said during the morning meeting. "He's under immense emotional strain. If he doesn't rest, doesn't eat, he might crash before she recovers." The team was torn. They wanted to preserve the incredible bond between the elephants, but they also needed to think about Ash's health. He wasn't a pet. He was still wild. And no matter how touching his actions were, there was no guidebook for what to do when a wild elephant is grieving in real time. Then something happened that none of them could have predicted. That afternoon, the power flickered. A sudden windstorm, rare for that time of year, had snapped a line nearby. The building's backup generator kicked in, but not before a loud pop echoed through the facility. The lights dimmed, the monitors beeped erratically. Ember jolted, frightened, and Ash rose to his full height, trumpeting. The room filled with tension. He paced, he growled. When a nurse entered, he swung his trunk. A warning. For the first time since his arrival, Ash seemed ready to defend, not just emotionally, but physically. It was as if the stress, the lights, the storm outside, it all broke something open. Tyler and Evelyn entered slowly, hands raised. "It's okay, Ash," she said gently, like speaking to a scared child. "She's all right. We're still here." Ash stood over Ember's bed, heaving, his hide bristling, but he didn't attack. He didn't run. Then Ember groaned. She lifted her head and let out a low, breathy sound. Not a growl, something softer. Ash turned, their eyes locked, and whatever storm had risen inside him. It passed. He lowered his head. The tension drained from the room like a flood receding. Ember, still weak, reached her trunk toward him. Barely a twitch, but enough. He curled beside her once again. Afterward, the staff realized something profound. Ash hadn't reacted from rage. It was fear, pure, desperate fear of losing her. That night, Evelyn wrote in her notes, "Ash is not here because of territory, instinct, or hunger. He is here because he cannot imagine a world without her." It was a week since Ember had been rescued from the python's grip. Her wounds were healing. Her appetite had returned. She could stand, unsteady at first, but stronger with each hour. And Ash remained by her side, his body curled protectively, his eyes ever watchful. But the recovery had brought a question no one wanted to answer. What happens next? Ash and Ember weren't meant to be here forever. They were wild. The center didn't have long-term enclosures for adult elephants, especially two that had clearly spent their lives in the deep backcountry, and keeping them together in a medical ward was only a temporary solution. If they stayed much longer, both elephants could begin to lose the instincts that kept them alive in the wild. Evelyn Hart met with Tyler and the rest of the staff in the briefing room, the air thick with silence. "She's strong enough to be moved to the rewilding habitat," Evelyn said. "We've had elephants recover there before. Minimal human contact, full-time surveillance, access to forest and prey tracking. If we transition her now, she'll still remember how to be an elephant." Tyler folded his arms. "What about Ash?" Evelyn hesitated. "That's the question." They had never seen a bond like theirs, but nature had rules, and no matter how human the emotions seemed, they had to ask, was keeping them together helping or harming? "We'll try something gradual," Evelyn finally had said. "Let's move Ember, let's see how he responds." The next morning, the staff entered the room before sunrise. Ash raised his head immediately. His body stiffened when they approached Ember with the stretcher. "It's okay, boy," Tyler whispered. "Just a short trip." Ember didn't resist. She was groggy, but aware. As they lifted her, Ash stood and followed, close but not interfering. They transported her to the rewilding enclosure, a vast fenced stretch of protected land rich with trees, streams, and familiar smells of the forest. When they laid her down under the cover of pine, Ash hovered nearby, sniffing the air, circling nervously. Then the gate closed. It was only temporary. They needed to observe Ember alone, see how she adjusted without his presence clouding her behavior. Ash didn't take it well. For hours, he paced outside the enclosure. He let out low rumbles. He lay beside the gate. At one point, he even pressed his shoulder against the fence, trying to feel her through it. Evelyn watched from the cameras. "He's not letting go," she said softly. "Not until she's ready." 2 days passed, then something changed. Ash didn't return to the gate the following morning. Instead, he wandered further into the woods surrounding the center, slowly reacquainting himself with the wild. That night, Ember stood on her own, 8 leaves from the ground, and lay under the trees without glancing at the fence line. The team took it as a sign. It was time. They opened the final gate to the national park. No cages, no handlers, just the open forest. That afternoon, Ember walked into the wilderness limping but alive. Ash was nowhere in sight, but they found his tracks nearby. Parallel paths carved side by side through the pine needles. Autumn swept over the forest like a quiet hush. Golden leaves blanketed the trails, and a crispness curled in the air. It had been 3 weeks since Ember stepped through the rewilding gate into open forest. Ash had not been seen since, but signs of him remained. Tracks, scratches on tree trunks, tufts of thick gray hide caught on low branches. Rangers monitoring the park's interior often noted them both separately. Ember's collar pinged weakly, placing her deep in the hills near the river basin. Ash's signals were fainter but unmistakable, always close but never overlapping. It was as if they were dancing on the edge of reunion. Rachel Myers, one of the park's senior wildlife biologists, was the first to spot the moment it changed. She had hiked into a quiet glade, her binoculars trained on a family of deer. When she heard the unmistakable thud of heavy footsteps behind her, she froze, one hand on her elephant spray. But then she saw him, Ash standing at top a ridge, silent, watching her. But he wasn't interested in her. His ears twitched toward the trees behind her, and when she turned, she spotted Ember, bursting into view, her coat glinting in the low light. Neither elephant moved at first. Then Ember huffed, low, gentle. Ash chuffed back, and slowly, step by step, they came together. Rachel didn't dare speak or move. She watched in stillness as Ash gently nuzzled Ember's shoulder, not as a mate claiming a partner, but as a guardian returning home. Rachel radioed in softly. They found each other. From that moment on, Ash and Ember traveled together, but something was different. Ash no longer walked beside her. He walked slightly behind, as if watching her strength, as if ensuring she led. "They've shifted," Evelyn remarked, reviewing trail footage days later. "She's healed, and now he protects from a distance." The forest, however, was far from safe. The colder it grew, the more desperate certain animals became. And worse, rumors of poachers had begun to circulate again. The rangers increased patrols, especially near known trap lines. Then one morning a snare was found, old, rusted, but bloodied. And nearby, a shredded radio collar. Panic surged through the staff. Was it Ash or Ember? Drones were deployed, rangers spread out. Tyler joined the search, hiking alone into the deep western woods where the elephants had last been seen. Hours passed, then came a signal, faint and static, laced from a collar still transmitting. Ember. They found her pacing at the edge of a ravine, frantic. She wasn't hurt, but she wouldn't leave the area. Her eyes kept darting to the tree line. Tyler followed her gaze, and then he heard it. A groan, rough, ragged. He pushed through the brush and found Ash lying in the dirt. A crude metal snare embedded deep in his foreleg, biting through muscle and skin. Blood soaked the ground. Tyler's heart dropped. Ash tried to rise but collapsed with a growl. His eyes flicked up at Tyler, which seemed wild and full of pain, but not fear. He recognized him, and behind them Ember paced, close enough to protect, but still giving space. Tyler knelt, called for backup, and whispered, "We've got you, buddy. Hang on." For the second time in his life, Ash was at the mercy of humans, and for the second time, he trusted them. The rescue was quiet. No fanfare, just the soft rustling of leaves, the rhythmic sound of wheels over dirt, and the breathless tension of time moving too fast. Ash lay sedated in the ranger truck's bed, a blanket pulled gently over his massive frame. Ember had followed them from the ravine all the way to the edge of the road, watching until the last moment before disappearing into the trees, like she trusted they'd do what she couldn't. Back at the Wildlife Center, the team worked in total silence. Everyone knew Ash. He was no longer just another elephant. He was a symbol of something they rarely got to witness, a bond between wild animals that didn't just defy instinct, it defined it. The snare had done serious damage. The metal had crushed muscle and torn through tendons. The gash was deep. Evelyn stood over the table, hands trembling slightly as she cleaned the wound. "I don't know if he'll walk right again," she whispered. But Tyler was firm. "If anyone can recover, it's him." Hours passed. They worked in shifts, flushing the wound, stitching where they could, bandaging where they couldn't. Ash didn't fight. Even unconscious, his body seemed at ease, like he understood again that these humans were trying to save him. When the anesthesia wore off, he groaned, then lifted his head slowly, painfully. The staff stood back, breath held. Ash blinked, scanned the room, and exhaled through his nose. He didn't panic. He didn't flinch. He simply lay back down. A week later, he took his first steps. They were awkward, lopsided. His leg dragged slightly, but he moved. And more importantly, he wanted to. Ember was kept nearby in a separate enclosure. They couldn't risk exposing his wound to dirt or rain just yet, but she waited by the fence line every morning. When Ash was rolled outside in a crate for fresh air, she sat close, letting out soft sounds. They never needed to touch to be close. One day when Ash stumbled, he let out a pained huff. Ember answered with a low, steady chuff, and he tried again. Every inch he gained was because she believed he could. After 3 weeks, he walked without help. The limp would remain. Evelyn confirmed it. "He'll never run like before," she said, "but he's strong, and most importantly, he has a reason to keep moving." That reason stood beside him when the final gate opened. Back in the forest, the rangers left them in a clearing untouched by human hands. Wild, raw, quiet, a place where no traps could reach, no roads could scar the land. Tyler gave one last look at the pair before stepping away. "Take care of her," he whispered. "She took care of you." Ash didn't turn back. He and Ember walked side by side into the trees, not as survivors, not as symbols, but as something simpler, something more real. Family. Weeks later, hikers reported seeing them near the lake, always together, always close. And one day a drone captured an image from above. Ember lying peacefully in a sunny meadow while Ash stood nearby, his body still scarred, his legs stiff, but his eyes bright, watching, guarding, loving. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes that real love, even in the wild, doesn't need words to be understood. Sometimes the most powerful bonds are the ones born in silence, tested by fire, and healed by loyalty. Sometimes the most powerful bonds are the ones born in silence, tested by fire, and healed by loyalty.